This episode is brought to you in part by my loyal patrons. If you've ever wanted to directly support your favorite creative, then patreon.com is the place for you. I consider my patrons to be my small army of support, especially when I'm in need of extra bravery to keep doing what I do. Patreon has a very attainable mission to help every creator become sustainable. And for that, creatives everywhere are so grateful. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Nick Conadera is a filmmaker and a fellow brave artist. You're going to love some of the stuff we cover in today's episode. He is the guy behind the movie Sharp, which is available on iTunes and Amazon right now. You can go watch it later if you'll love it. I watched it the other day. He's also doing this fascinating project right now working with Hal Elrod, who wrote the best-selling book titled Miracle Morning. If you've been in the self-help scene in the last several years, then you definitely know who Hal Elrod is. Now, Nick and I cover some talking about the book, but what you'll learn from our conversation is some of the ways Nick is witnessing his own bravery through working within this project. I just want to thank Nick publicly for getting raw and honest about what it means to struggle, how to ask for help, how to admit to reality, and for revealing what it means to wrestle with being disciplined in the life of making brave art. It takes a lot of guts to answer some of the questions I ask in this episode, but somehow I had this inkling that Nick was up for the challenge. And I think you'll agree with me, he is a gracious communicator with a powerful perspective. Are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I'm ready to get naked.
Let's do it. Let's get totally nude. Okay, so we were just talking a little bit about the movie that just came out. Give us a synopsis. Give us your director's take or intro.
So Sharp is a indie dramedy about a lazy stoner surf bum who has to adapt to the corporate world and learn professional skills and learn how to sell knives in order to support his family after his dad loses his job. So it's about the current state of the economy, at least back when I made it in 2008. And it's about personal growth and entrepreneurship and going out and achieving your dreams and saying no to the 9-to-5 system and just all that good stuff.
All of those things I love. My question to you is this: how much of that movie was autobiographical?
That's a good question. So it was inspired by my experiences selling knives, but the experiences that I had is pretty much the experiences that every sales rep has working for this company. So it's not really about me. Like a lot of it is inspired. Like I did sell 15K in the competition. I did win the competition, but I wasn't like a stoner surfer. I mean, at another time of my life, but not during that time, not when I was selling knives.
Did you have that idea to write this movie? Did it come to you like from the stork, from the sky?
You know, that's a good question. I love the way you phrase that. I actually do believe that ideas are sent to you, and I believe that we receive them because we're like, when we receive an idea, that means we're meant to bring that into fruition. And the vast majority of ideas we actually don't pursue and we don't manifest, but the universe wants us to. But I actually, when I graduated film school, I had several scripts that I wanted to make, and I realized this film, there's a lot of these managers that work for the company that I know who have a lot of money. It would be easy to raise the money. It also has a huge audience already. There are millions of Cutco customers in the United States, and they recruit about 30,000 college students per year. So it already had a built-in audience.
I will say this. I almost attended a Cutco intro thing. Or the
like an interview?
Like an interview. I think it was an interview or something. And I got 15 minutes in and was like, oh, fuck no. No,
it's definitely not. It's not a normal job, and it's not for everybody. That's for sure. But I was one of those not everybody's. I was like, dude,
what was it that drew
awesome.
you to it?
That's a good question. Well, when you first walk in, like the office is usually, it's very barren. There's usually not much furniture. It's usually in a cheap office. It doesn't look very nice. And they have like just trophies all over everywhere. Just tons of trophies everywhere. And you're like, what was all these trophies? Like, where did they get these trophies? And there's actually a scene in the film about the trophies. So it seems very, I was actually like, my managers tell me I was actually the most skeptical person in training, but I ended up being the top rep because it was, first of all, I really liked my manager. He was really cool and he was really young. And I asked him in the interview, actually, I was like, hey, how old are you? And he's like 23 or whatever. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like you're that young and you're already a manager. Like that speaks to me. I don't know what it said to me, but it said something. And I really I was trying to get jobs at like Target pushing carts and like office type assistant jobs, and nobody would hire me. Nobody would even give me a chance. And I was like overqualified for all of these things. And I just really liked the fact that it was so super independent. And it was basically, you run your own business. Basically, you decide how big your paycheck is every week. How much time and effort you put into it determines how much money you're going to make. And it's completely entrepreneurial. And I loved how independent it was. I loved how much control over my schedule I had. And there's no like quotas or anything. It's just like, do what you can, do the best that you can. And I liked the atmosphere. It was a bunch of young, awesome entrepreneurs and salespeople, basically. It was like people just like me. I fit in. It was one of the very few times in my life where I actually felt like I fit in. And the other people were just like me, and they became really, really close friends. And I still know a lot of them to this day.
That's really fun. Okay, so you went to film school. Clearly, the selling knives was not going to be a forever thing. When you got out of film school, you had all these scripts, and you said, how did you pick this one? I mean, you already mentioned like some of like the market reasons why you picked it out of the other scripts, but was there like...
those were actually the main reasons. And the reason that those were the reasons is because I don't know when you went to school, but coming out of school for me was 2010, in the middle of the recession. There's no possible way I was going to get a job as a filmmaker with a film degree. The only way I was going to survive is by being self-employed and doing it on my own. And I did do that, but that was the motivation behind a lot of my decisions at that age, because it was all about, I'm living in Los Angeles, one of the most expensive cities on the planet. I have rent and bills to pay, and I have to make it. So really those were the major motivations behind the decision to make that script. But it was also just really fun. The script was super, super fun, and I knew it would be a blast to make. It was very meta. Like the person I would have to become to raise that kind of money. My first goal was $1 million, which is still not very much for an independent film budget. And then my second goal was 350, and we raised 222. So I didn't even hit my second goal, but the person I would have to become to be able to raise that kind of money from private investors, I would have to grow and become a salesman just like the main character in the script. And I had already experienced that journey as a sales rep selling knives. So
very much an Inception situation.
Yeah, it made perfect sense. I was like, I have to do this. Like that's an amazing challenge. I'm going to have to become the main character of this film to make this film, and I'm going to grow in so many ways if I can raise that kind of money for a business venture and actually start a company and try to get that money back. Like the person I would become doing that, I would be able to, it would free me and give me opportunities to make films in the future that I really want to make and not have to depend on a system like the studio system.
Yeah. What's it like to ask for help like that?
It's actually very easy. What's really funny is I'm not very good at asking for help. I have an assistant now, an assistant editor, and I get really weird about like asking him to do other things. Like the other day he was driving over to my house where all the hard drives are. And I asked him to get me coffee, and I felt so bad like asking him, because that's like a thing in the film industry. Like if I'm a PA, I don't want to like get people's coffee. That's like kind of below a PA level, which is like PA is like kind of entry level onto set.
I remember, so my first job was my first job out of college was working as a paralegal for an IP attorney.
Oh, wow.
And we were working out of his house, and he was, it was a pretty laid back situation. And there was one day where he asked me to get coffee, and I came back and I handed it to him. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he probably should have fired me right away. I just said, let's not make this a regular thing, okay?
I know there's something very degrading about getting people coffee for some reason, but it's really, dude, I mean, if you're there to help, like, he was like, yeah, sure. I was like, get yourself whatever you want, I'll reimburse you, but I'm not very good at asking for help. But raising that kind of money, it was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was ready for it. The process of starting a company and basically organizing it with an attorney so that you're legally allowed to accept large investments. It's like a 6-month process with like 100 pages of legalese, legal documents that the investor has to read and sign, and you have to read and sign. So I was ready. I had already done the prep. I was ready for it. But what was difficult was getting the money back to them, because we had a distributor, but it just didn't. 95% of independent filmmakers have the same experience where they say they're a distributor. It's really a sales rep or a producer's rep or something, or a sales agent, and they'll promise you a lot, but when it comes down to actually convincing these platforms to get your film, it's a completely different story. So they didn't really do anything with the film. So I ended up self-distributing it, and we made about like 20 grand since then. And now it's on legitimate platforms where you can see it for real that have more brand awareness. Yeah. On iTunes and Amazon and PlayStation 4. So hopefully we'll make some more money, but up until now, we've only made about 20 grand, which isn't really enough to even sustain the film as a business. So that was hard for me, understanding that I couldn't give that money back to them, because that was my plan the whole time, it's an investment. You can think of it as a loan. Like, I'm planning on giving you this money back. So that was really hard for me to receive that and then understand that I couldn't give it back. I didn't feel like I was worthy of that,
Whoa, that's big. I mean, so right now I'm 64% funded for my next album. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, this is not a total secret, but 50% of it was me funding myself. And then I started the pre-order campaign and, got like 14% of the way there. And then it's just been total plateau. And I feel so much a sense of, it's not obligation, because that makes it sound like a ball and chain, but it's an honor to me to fulfill my promise to the people who pre-ordered this album. And it's a heavy weight on me, one that I gladly donned myself as like definitely a choice, but I can only imagine what it would be like to have people help you do that, help you achieve your dream, and then realizing that you can't. I mean, what have you done to reconcile that within yourself? Really hard question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, I think we all have difficulty with self-worth, especially in our culture today. And I feel like especially artists have a lot of trouble with things like money. And there's a lot of myths that, like this American artist sort of meta narrative that's been created about the starving artist, or, if you accept a deal, you're a sellout, or money somehow taints the creative process or changes it. I just had to get over it. I just called all my investors and said, here's, what's going on with the distributor. Here's the situation. Like, this doesn't look good. We kind of just got screwed over. I don't know. Everybody.
I hate making phone calls to begin with. So
here's the thing. It was a lot of like the people who gave me money. Some of them were legitimate investors who had invested in them and were savvy. And some of them, like, nobody in the film industry would even return my phone call. Like, it's easier to get money outside of the industry than it is within the industry, even with a good script and a good cast. But when I called all them and I said, like, here's the situation, like, I feel so horrible. My plan was to be a profitable filmmaker. Like, I don't want to just be a filmmaker. I want to be a sustainable filmmaker. I want to continue to be able to make films over and over and over again. And every single one of them were like, hey, listen, we didn't do this for the money. We told you from the very beginning, we didn't do this for the money. We did it to support you. And that's the thing. Like, I think people who are on fire enough or turned on enough to actually go and pursue their dreams, like, that to me is bravery. Going against everything we've been taught and everything we've been told since we were a child. Well, maybe not since, like, when we were a kid, our parents were like, you can grow up to be whatever you want. I want to be a ninja. That's what I wanted to be when I was a little kid. But as soon as we get into school and stuff, we're conditioned to believe that you have to go through life a certain way, go to school, get good grades, to get into a good college, get a degree, get a good job, buy a house, go into debt, have kids, go into more debt, try to save, tithe, and invest, for your retirement so that you can retire and then not work at all, which is like ludicrous. We're conditioned to believe we have to go through life a certain way. And I think the definition of a hero is someone who goes against that, who goes against everything we've been taught. And it does require a lot of bravery. I kind of like lost my train of thought.
Hey, no, that's okay.
I'm in this cleanse, so my head's a little foggy.
No. I think what you touched on a little bit of what I define as creative courage. Courage and bravery is a synonym. They're the same. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, creativity requires courage, and courage and bravery require creativity.
Interesting.
Right? So you have to have courage in order to be creative, to go against the norm. But even doing that is a courageous, like, it's like a cyclical thing. Like, I could talk in circles for days about it. And so when artists step outside of the lifestyle norm, they are being courageous, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing creative things with it. So there's just this whole rat's nest of creativity and courage that's just that they're just throwing around like a hacky sack on a...
Yeah. And when you take that leap of faith and you actually go get out of your comfort zone and go do something that's a huge risk, like either personally or professionally. For me, starting a $250,000 business and making my first feature film was a huge risk. And I think people who go and take those risks, to hear from your supporters, basically your investors or your audience or whoever, like, hey, we don't need the money. It's not about the money. It's really about you. We did this to support you. When you go take that risk and you take that leap of faith, it's very scary and you don't really have any idea how it's going to go or really what you're doing. To hear that is so invigorating and so empowering. It's very encouraging too. It gives you a lot more courage to be like, wow, like this whole time I was really doing it. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was really doing it to launch all of our careers because it was all of us straight out of college. But to hear that, it's just,
and that's the thing about the cycle,
way
is that the more creativity you have, the more courage you have, and then you can have more creativity. And it's just this spiral that gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
I love that. I love that metaphor.
Yeah. And I think one of the other elements too is that, you see a lot of people like at the height of their career when that spiral is huge and super impressive because they've like raised $5 million for this new film, but what you have failed to see is, or what a lot of people fail to see, is that where the spiral started.
Yeah.
How tiny the spiral started.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. I could talk about it for days.
I love that spiral. I love that spiral.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with spirals and sacred geometry, by the way. So.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Take that and put that in your pipe and smoke it. Okay, so let's do something different. I just started this recently, but for one question, let's flip the script and have you ask me a question.
Yes.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Oh, I love it.
Go for it. Ask me anything.
Okay. So as an artist yourself, first of all, how did it feel when so I'm a visual person, I'm a filmmaker, losing my eyesight is the biggest fear actually I have in my life. For you, when you started developing your tremor with your bow hand, what did that feel like? How was that transition for you?
Ugh. I first thought that the tremor was like because I was on the wrong birth control or something like that. And I called my doctor and she was like, that's a weird side effect. So why don't you just go ahead and stop that? We'll get you off that and like put you on something else. And I didn't really think anything else of it, except like over the course of like 6 months, I would start to notice that if I was like talking with my hands or having a meal with somebody, I would notice like my chopsticks shaking while I was waiting to take a bite, like putting the fork up to my mouth or something like that.
Completely involuntary.
Yeah, not trying to do it. At first, I was noticing it, and then I'd like forget that it would happen, and I'd be talking with a friend at dinner or something, and I could see their eyes look at my hand and not my whatever I was trying to say before I put the food in my mouth. You know how you can see what somebody's looking at.
Yeah.
And then that would like get me super self-conscious about it and everything. So
yeah, but being an artist using, you make art with that hand, how did that feel?
That was before it really affected anything. Like it was just, so what if your fork shakes? So what if you drop a pea? Like no big deal, But the day that I called my doctor to like have a real serious conversation about it was the day that I heard the tremor through my instrument. Yeah. Yeah, I was waiting for a cello student to come in to their lesson, and I was just warming up, doing the same thing I always do, and I heard it, and I was like, wait. And I tried to like, sometimes you can eliminate the way something sounds by just like trying it a couple times and you go, oh, there it is. That's the thing I'm going for. But I kept trying and it wouldn't go away no matter what I fixed or altered about how I held the instrument or the bow. And I had that like sinking, like the oh shit sinking feeling in your stomach where like that like extra jolt of acid gets like shot into your stomach lining and you're like, oh, what? That happened. It was awful.
Yeah. That's horrible. Is it a neurological thing or is it a nerve thing?
It's a neurological thing. Yeah.
Okay. So,
and I later found out that it's degenerative. So it'll get worse and maybe spread to other body parts and things.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So it's even more important for you to create than you need to get yourself.
But it also, like this is like zooming forward. One of the things that I have come to love about courage and creativity is constraints and like the limitations. Actually, I think a lot of, especially in like the self-help realm, we're all talking about how the limit does not exist. Like dream big, like do all these things. It's like, and it makes me want, like, I have like half of me like fully is buying into the whole thing, drinking all of the Kool-Aid as much as I can drink of it. But the other half of me is so skeptical. And that half of me is the part that has learned through this experience that constraints and limitations are actually a gift. And if you are using them as a gift and as a tool, then you actually get a lot further. You might end up in a different spot, but you get a lot further.
Have you read Art and Fear?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm obsessed with this idea of struggle being the source of the motivation or creativity for artists, because I struggle a lot. And I'm also intensely creative. And I know that a lot of artists have done their best work, struggling. Does that give you a source of inspiration or just get the creative juices flowing?
You mean the struggle?
Yeah. Pain, it's just pain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to be victims of art, or we don't have to be victims in order to make art. I think actually art expression comes from a place of choice and power. So the struggle is definitely a factor, but it's not a source of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think.
And what do you think?
I think it's easier to emote and express yourself in moments of pain. I think that's why it's helpful for some artists. But science is telling us now that actually positive psychology and positive emotions are much more powerful and produce much better results than negative psychology or negative emotions. So, and I've done some of my best work when I am routinely in flow, like unstoppable consistently, not in moments of, not when I'm doing not so well. But there's always, it's peaks and valleys, you just ride the waves of life. Creative inspiration comes from life itself, for me at least.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we have on a previous episode, Dr. Chris Friesen. He's a clinical neuropsychologist, psychologist. And he was talking a lot about, in that episode, he talks a lot about the benefit of the dark thoughts that we have.
Wow.
And how acknowledging that they exist is a lot better than trying to fight them with positive.
Or ignoring them or pushing them down.
Right. So I see the value in the negative. I don't think it's healthy to like wallow or flounder around in it, have a pity party inside of that air. The positive elements of that. And I think that's where the gift of discipline comes into play. Is that like just by doing something every day, you get in a habit of the things you want to do, right? And the way you want to live.
Yeah.
And then it makes being brave a little bit easier because you're in the practice of it already,
I love the way you said that, the gift of discipline, because I have a strange relationship to rules and discipline and all that stuff. My routine constantly is changing because of that.
Before we get back to the conversation, I have just got to tell you about this awesome group of people I am honored to call my patrons. Every time a new song of mine is born, the first recording of it is tenderly revealed to this devoted group. They get to hear all my new material in its raw, fresh, vulnerable state and know that they are helping me do what I do. Because at the end of the day, they just want me to keep doing what I'm doing, and any reminder of that completely floors me every time I think about it. All of this support occurs through a website called patreon.com, which was started by this guy named Jack Conte, whose very attainable mission is to help every creator achieve sustainable income. In a world where artists are seen scrambling for pennies squeezed out of an expiring and broken economic system, the folks at Patreon have brought us back to what all creators used to do. Patronage is not new. But unlike a lot of popular crowdfunding sites out there, Patreon enables creators to receive support on a regular basis. The great thing is that my patrons set their pledges to whatever amount they feel comfortable with, which means patronage fits every budget out there. And of course, you can cancel at any time. If you're a creative type who's interested in joining Patreon yourself, I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. Just shoot me an email anytime. Bottom line, my patrons help me do everything I do, but better and more frequently. If you are interested in becoming a patron of mine, go to barenakedbravery.com/Patreon, Patreon.
One more question I have for you, and then we can do whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
I'd love to know is why you make art.
Oh, that's a good question. I make art because I'm compelled to do so. It makes me a healthier person when I have a outlet of expression.
Yeah.
I can't, I would be really piss poor human being if I was not expressing myself. And I've been in those places.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And they are always paralleled with not being creative, at least for me. Whenever I'm not creative and I'm not creating consistently, I get very depressed. I get very just in a really dark, bad place, just not a good place at all.
I had a previous parent of a cello student call that the feng shui of life. The feng shui.
That's great.
It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. Okay, so speaking of habits, you have this new project that you're working on.
Yeah.
Describe a little bit of it, because I know I'm going to just totally muck it up.
Well, I know Hal Elrod from Selling Knives. He's a Hall of Fame sales rep.
Really?
Yeah, for Cutco.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot of people, like in the entrepreneurial world, it's very well known because a lot of people who come, it's basically like Cutco and Vector. Vector is a company that markets Cutco. They are basically an entrepreneur school. Like it's a bunch of young college students learning how to be entrepreneurial and learning how to sell and create their own business. And a lot of people who come out of Vector and Cutco go off to do like really incredible things. So he was a Hall of Fame rep. That's how I knew him. He played a small role in my first feature film, Sharp. And that's actually
I thought that was him. So when I was watching the trailer, I was like, I think that's Hal Elrod.
Yeah. So it's really funny. But that's actually, I think the first time I ever met him was on set of the film, which was really, really cool way to meet him.
Did you, when you asked him to be in the movie, what a trip.
Yeah, I think I asked someone for his number and then I just cold called him and he actually answered the phone and I was like, hey man, I'm making a movie about Cutco. And like everybody at that point knew who I was and what I was doing. So
everybody in the Cutco world?
Yeah. So he already knew. And I was like, hey, would you play a small cameo role in my film and just come to set for a day? I'll make you a free video. And he's like, that's weird. I was literally just going to call you to ask you if you could make a video for me. And he's like, dude, you shouldn't have dropped down so quickly. Like I would have still paid you. I would have been in the movie just for fun. I still would have paid you to make the video. And I was like, oh dude, don't worry about it. Like, so I made like sort of a Tim Ferriss, like 4-hour body style trailer for The Miracle Morning when it like first came out.
And which is his book,
yeah,
which is all about like morning habits. Basically.
Yeah. So when the recession hit, his business, he lost most of his business because he's a coach and a speaker and an author. And he basically got into a depression and he lost his house and he lost most of his income. The only thing he didn't lose was his girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife. Who's Ursula. She's really awesome. It's cool to see that they've stuck together through it. But he basically just realized that he wasn't working on himself. He wasn't growing personally. So of course, his environment and his results and the success in his life wouldn't grow because, Jim Rohn, who's considered like maybe the father of personal development, said at one point, your level of success will never exceed your level of personal development. So he basically just researched a bunch of really successful people and entrepreneurs and see what are the routines and the habits of some of the most successful people. And he found these 6 habits: meditation or silence or prayer, affirmations, visualization, journaling, reading, and exercise, which are really stem off of like some very key practices like gratitude, exercise, meditation, and learning in general. All of those sort of practices sort of stem off of those really key core practices. So he wrote a book about it. He started doing this thing. He called it his miracle morning. He started waking up an hour earlier every day and doing those 6 things and then going into the workday. And very quickly his life turned around and he like doubled his income and all these amazing things happened. And so he wrote a book about it and he self-published it. Like he wasn't really planning on doing much with it and it just took off. It just grew organically by itself on its own. And it's still to this day, like it's still growing and now it's released in like 20 different countries. And it's insane how the movement has grown. But anyways, as a filmmaker, I was trying to figure out what my next project was. And he always told me like, my goal is to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. So I said, hey, Hal,
that makes me want to go, aw.
No, I mean, he just wants to help people.
That's so great.
He's a really down to earth. He's just an amazing person. But I said, hey, not many people would read a self-help book. The self-help industry has sort of this brand problem in the public, it's just sort of frowned down upon. And a lot of people see it as just sales or scammy or slimy. But a lot of people would be willing to watch a movie or a documentary. So why don't we adapt the book into a movie? And he's like, wow, that's a really cool idea. It took 18 months to finally convince him. And as soon as he decided yes, it was like full energy, full steam ahead. And we just started interviewing a lot of really successful entrepreneurs like Robert Kiyosaki, Robin Sharma, Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Brian Johnson. We're going to interview Arianna Huffington, Jack Canfield, Bob Proctor, like a lot of people in The Secret. And a lot of like thought leaders and experts in the fields of psychology and neurobiology and meditation to explain like why doing these practices, the science behind why it actually helps you in all of these various areas of your life. So that's what I've been working on for the last year. And I was actually traveling pretty much nonstop for the last year, pretty much just for that movie. I have other clients that I travel for too, but it was mostly for that film. And
let me ask you this. In this whole year where you've been interviewing all these people, what have you learned about this idea of morning ritual that maybe wasn't in the book, but that will probably be in the movie?
That's a good question. And that was one of the challenges is how do we add more value than what's in the book? And how do we get people who have read the book and have not read the book still get value from it? And I already had my own morning routine before the Miracle Morning was a thing. And then so when the Miracle Morning came out, I was like, this is amazing. And I just adopted it really into my own routine.
What's your routine, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, my routine, I wake up, I brush my teeth while I'm making hot water. I have a glass of hot water or a cup of hot water with lemon. I sit out on this deck right here and meditate for like 20 minutes. I just sit and do nothing. I try to think of nothing. I just sort of slowly wake up. And then I'll read for like half an hour to an hour, as I really love reading. And then I'll journal or write. Like right now, I'm getting my master's, my MFA in documentary. So I have a lot of writing work to do. So I use that time in the morning to do my writing. But usually I'll journal about something that's on my mind or something that I'm learning about, or I'll do gratitude journaling and just journal about what I'm grateful for, which is an amazingly powerful practice, especially to do it in the morning. And then after journaling, I hit the gym. And while I'm in the gym, I listen to my affirmations and a podcast usually. And then I go on a run and I listen to more podcasts, more affirmations. Sometimes I just do the gym. Sometimes I just run. Sometimes I do both. Sometimes I'll drive to Zilker Park, which is about 15 minutes away in downtown Austin, to run around the river, and then come home and I have a shake that's spinach, banana, plant protein, berries, and carrot juice.
Okay. And that's your whole thing?
That's how I start every single day. Every single day.
Yes. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yes.
That takes you how long, the whole thing?
It varies. Sometimes it's hard with traveling too. Like I have to change it up with traveling because I'm in a different city like at least twice a month, sometimes every week. But if I'm in a hurry and I have a lot to do, I'll shrink it to like an hour, which is what the book says. All you have to do is wake up an hour earlier than you normally do. But I like to stretch it out because it's like my time for me. So it can be up to a few hours, every morning.
How different was your routine before you read the book and started doing stuff with Hal?
I didn't do affirmations before. I meditated, but I don't think I really didn't really do it in the morning, and I didn't do it consistently. I did yoga a lot. Like I usually just woke up, went straight on to, when I was living downtown LA, had a roof like on my house that sort of looked over a bunch of cool stuff, and you could see the Hollywood sign from it. And I would just go straight up onto the roof and start doing yoga immediately and sit in the sun with my cat and just sort of chill. That's how I started my day. But it wasn't like I didn't read in the morning. The Miracle Morning definitely amped up my morning routine for sure.
It amped up your game. Okay, so how are you amping up the movie? I mean, are you allowed to share?
Yeah, what do you mean? I'll tell you anything.
We started touching on it a little bit, but what are you doing in the movie that wasn't discussed in the book, or what?
Oh, right. Well, in the book, Hal doesn't go into like the specifics of how other people start their day. And I think that's really one of the main things that we're doing. And he doesn't really go into the science of it. Like we've interviewed a lot of experts, like I said, about just the science and biology behind why doing these things, especially in the morning, why it helps you have more energy, why it helps you maximize your productivity and even your creativity, and why it just balances the chemicals in your brain, like especially exercise and meditation, and why it helps you ignore, the negative voices in your head and all those things. And, we're really like, I'll literally go and, document like Joe Polish, who's the head of the Genius Network, which is a mastermind that Tony Robbins and Richard Branson like come to regularly. I went to his house in Arizona and I literally like documented how he woke up and started his day. And we've been doing that with a lot of really just awesome, really amazing entrepreneurs and independent creatives. And that's really cool to see specifically how these people start their day. Whether it's the Miracle Morning or not, they pretty much always have some routine that is part of the Miracle Morning. So that's something that's not in the book, which is really cool. And the film itself, it goes beyond, like, we're following three main storylines. One is how these people start their day and the science behind it. One storyline is just sort of regular people who aren't famous entrepreneurs, like how starting their own morning routine completely transformed their lives, because there's these incredible stories about people who cured their cancer and people who lost 100 pounds and people who like saved their marriage, and like all these incredible transformational stories. But their main storyline is really Hal's mission to change millions of lives and to show how the movement has grown. That's the main storyline, which you don't really, obviously that's not in the book because that was like before the whole movement started, but we actually get to see what Hal's doing on a daily basis to get the word out there and to see how many people it's affecting, and all the things that he's doing with the international media tours and the Miracle Morning event that he put on. That was also a co-creation event to bring the community together to decide, hey, what do you want for the future of the Miracle Morning movement? Like, what would you like to see happen with it? So a lot of like really awesome stuff like that that's not in the book.
I am really looking forward to seeing it. So That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is going to be the last question because I know you have a day you want to go about doing the rest of your day.
Well, I'm happy to hang with you too.
Oh, well, thank you. This has been so much fun. Okay, so my final question is, how has making this next movie with Hal, how has Bravery shown itself to you in the process of making the movie?
It's a really good question. So as an artist, we like to sit in our studio alone and just create. Filmmaking is a collaborative art form. And even still, the way I've always made my films is I write the script. It's out of my head. It's my vision. And my collaborators are really there to carry out my vision. The way I like to manage is, here's my idea. Now go show me what you can do. Go and make it better. I want to see what you can do. That's how I personally collaborate. But when you're working with clients, and this is like, even though it's a film and it's a documentary, he's really treated the situation as a client/service provider type relationship, which has been very challenging for me because, again, I'm an artist and he has his own vision and I have my own vision. And it's up to us to like kind of bring those visions together and use our strength to create something amazing. And it's really hard because I really don't know how it's going to turn out. Like, I know it's going to be good because I will not ever die. I won't die like having ever made something bad. Like, it has to be up to my standards. I have really, really high standards for myself and my work. So I know it's going to be really good, but is it going to be exactly how I want it? Is it going to be exactly how I see it in my head? Probably not. And that's scary to not have that control. I'm a very controlling person. And it's also scary because so far the relationship has been, with any long-term collaboration, conflict is healthy. But interpersonal relationship has actually just been difficult for me my entire life, actually, to be completely honest. And that's, I think, a reason why I'm an artist and an independent. And that's why I don't have a job, because I can't have people tell me what to do. It just doesn't make sense to me. So the relationship has been tested by the project itself a lot, which is scary for me because the friends I've made and the family I've formed, I didn't really have a family when I was a kid. So the community that I have now because of Hal, really, it's all because of him and because of his community and the other people that he works with. I'm really afraid to lose that. And that's really, really frightening, really scary.
That puts a lump in my throat for you.
Yeah. And I've gone through so many romantic relationships and so many friendships, and so many things have been lost because of my art and because of my work. And, even client relationships come and go. So it's really, really frightening to me. And to be able to balance that with, I usually am happy to sacrifice the relationship for the quality of the end product. The quality of the end product has always been more important to me than the relationship. And right now in my career as an artist, that's sort of changing, and being able to traverse that new territory is very challenging, very, very challenging for me. And I have no idea how it's going to turn out.
Okay. I have one more question. I know I had said it was the last one, but this is the last.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it's not. I don't know. Okay. You in 5 years take about 5 years, right? For the whole thing to settle down again you think?
What do you mean, the film?
Yeah, the film itself.
Well, it's going to launch in July or summer 2017. And
so 3 years.
Have a life of its own after that.
3 years. Yeah. 5 years. What would be the advice from future Nick be to present Nick?
Just keep going. You're doing everything you're going through, all the struggle, all the pain, all the doubting. And it's not just me doubting myself. It's everybody around me doubting me. You've never made a documentary before. You don't know what you're doing. I can't trust you with this. These are all things that are told to me by my collaborators and my community. And I'm like, then why am I here? I don't understand. Why did you hire me? I would just say everything you're going through is happening exactly the way it's supposed to. And it's only going to make you stronger and a better collaborator and a better artist. So just keep going and just keep pushing through it. You're on the right track. You're closer than you think. I think that's what I would say to myself.
That's really good. That's also a really great way to end an episode too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really have gotten a lot out of hearing your side of the story of bravery and making things.
Yeah, and to your audience out there, you guys could be listening to so many things on the internet and so many podcasts, but you chose to spend your time here with Emily and Nick, and I know that we're both grateful to you guys for that. So
like
some value.
If you're familiar with how Cutco knives are sold, or if you're familiar with vector marketing at all, then this is going to make a lot of sense to you, because today's brave takeaway from this episode is a pay it forward act, something in real life. I'm not going to ask you to download anything, although you can always download the Bare Naked Bravery coloring book for free. Wink, wink. But today's brave takeaway is to write a super quick note of encouragement to someone. It doesn't have to be a novel. A simple one-sentence text will do. But pick somebody who you would hate to see stop doing what they're doing. Pass on some extra fortitude and determination to them. Tell them to keep going. I know personally the most powerful form of encouragement I've ever received was 2 words. It was simply, don't stop, period. And it came to me from a total stranger who had no idea that I needed to hear that so badly. At my shows, if you've ever been to one of my house shows, I pass around a guest book. And someone had written "don't stop" period in the middle of a blank page. And I found it months later and broke out into tears. And I think that's what this brave takeaway is. I want you to know that you never know what will happen from a message like that. Nick and I would love to hear about all your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery. You can find Nick Conadera and myself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. And you can feel free to tag us so that we can cheer you on and see what you're up to. The books and links to watch Nick's movies and ways to keep in touch with him, they're all in our show notes for today's episode. So just go to barenakedbravery.com and look for Nick's episode there. And if you've enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we have enjoyed making it for you, then please give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It really does help us out a lot more than it is a hassle for you. And I know I say that all the time, but all of this bravery really does deserve to be spread as far and wide as possible. And you are a part of that. And I am so grateful that you are listening. There's so much that, like Nick said, there's so much that you can listen to and watch in today's online world. There's a ton of content out there. And it really does mean a lot that you choose this conversation and this show to go forth in your day. If you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier music creative agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, just go to barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm looking forward to being with you next week. We have some really great things in store for you. Until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.